there's a very interesting, data point that we've been able to dig out, and this, of course, has come no surprise from the August sales numbers of Maruti Suzuki. And I think, that's going to be, of course, a very interesting story for India to continue watching. But if we can pull out those graphics, I think some very, very telling signs of A, what India is driving, and B, what is driving India, both, if I can put it that way. So very interesting data coming in, especially from the month of August, and we've seen almost a 15% rise year on year in sales between August last year and August this year. Of course, you must have seen this data, but I want to go a little more granular into this data. And try
before you do that, that 14% is also on the back of the fact that 2022 was a COVID year, perhaps.
2022, we had seen recovery from COVID. I think we were badly hit in 2020 and 2021. But yeah, the economy has started opening up, and that is when you really saw people wanting to have mobility of their own and not be restricted to public transport.
Exactly.
And
so this is the year people are buying more cars, taking to more cars.
2022 would have already seen the buying action.
Right, but people are still working from home.
And people still, sure. But let's look at the other data which is coming from the Maruti stack, and that is really interesting because we'll see what kind of cars are being driven and what kind of cars are being actually shunned. So now, out of that 1.89 lakh that we spoke about, the domestic sales for Maruti are about 1.64 lakh cars, right, every month. So now what does this actually tell us? This tells us on an average every day the company is selling 5,300 cars. I've broken it down further. Every hour, and I'm assuming a 24-hour window, right? Showrooms are not going to be open 24 hours, but every hour Maruti Suzuki is selling 221 cars. Break it down further, 3.68 cars every minute. And the usual suspects are actually not there anymore when it comes to growth drivers. Look at the mini segment, the Alto and Espresso, the sub 5 lakh rupee cars. The decline has been about 45% from about 22,000 units a month last year in August last year to only about 12,000 units this year. Now let's look at the other data which is coming.
So that's literally half.
That's literally half, right? So 45% decline there, almost half. Now the mid-sized sort of compact segment, as we call it, the Baleno, Celerio, Desire, Ignis, Swift, WagonR, these were cars that were meant to be driving in India. They continue to be driving. So about 72,000 units last year, 72,000 this year. Even the van segment, which is the Eco, the one and only van, is flat at about 12,000 units. So no change there. Ciaz, the only sedan that Maruti has in its stable, which competes with the likes of, the Volkswagen breeds and the Honda City, etc. Ciaz is down about 44%. It's almost half from 1,500 units a month last year to about 850 units only this year. And no surprises, what is actually driving in India and what is driving India and what is India driving,
I think we're about to come to what
here we are, utility vehicles, both SUVs as well as MUVs, up from about, 58,000 odd units from about 27,000 units last year. That's more than double, 118% jump. No surprise, Maruti stock this morning has again been in the green. So, Ambareesh, I mean, this is not the kind of data one would have expected from a country like India, let's say 5 years ago. So, today we are at a point that it is not the small-sized cars. In fact, the mid-sized and mid-sized being the average, but even the utility vehicles, the expensive cars, which are driving growth for India. So, how do you see this auto story pan out, Ambareesh?
Affordability clearly has improved for the better in India, and the aspirations are decently high. And because of which we see that entry level, there are not too many people interested. It's more of the SUVs and the MUVs where the sales are happening now. And I think this will continue because if you look at the order book position of Maruti, it's about 4 lakh vehicles of orders which are still pending. Which they'll have to do it possibly over the next 3 or 4 months. But then we have seen this, sort of order book for the last 1.5 to 2 years post-COVID. So I think this will continue, no doubt.
Okay, do you see Maruti still not being in the EV space despite big announcements already made that 2025 is going to be the year when Maruti gets into
Absolutely.
electric mobility? Do you see the stock being, more or less range bound until 2025, or will you see some buying action in anticipation of electric vehicles also, as we get closer to 2025?
No, I think it was a very thought through decision as far as Maruti is concerned, that they will launch in the year 2025. And I suppose, I mean, in the run up to 2025, we should see the Maruti stock doing still better, because whatever they have done till date, they've done it in a very big manner. So I think it will be a big bang sort of a launch when it happens in 2025. And that's when I suppose the other players will really have to wait and watch out for.
I think I included many experts would say it's a little too late, perhaps, Kartik. You're joining the EV bandwagon when there are companies that have already announced massive plans. They're already stacking up. The inventories are up. Their plans are as grand as, having 50%, for example, in case of Tata.EV, having a 50% EV fleet by somewhere in late 2030s. Big plans there from different competitors. Do you think Maruti is a bit too late, perhaps, in joining the bandwagon?
So, Shweta, as I see it, Maruti does not believe in knee-jerk reactions.
Okay.
And having observed the company over time, it's very sure-footed. It enters a market or enters a segment or enters a particular price range, knowing very well that it has the capability to deliver.
Okay.
We've seen Maruti also being a laggard, so to speak, in the SUV space. As the SUV space was hotting up, you had players like Mahindra and Tata coming out model after model with new cars. But look at, ever since Maruti launched the Grand Vitara less than about 8 months ago, and or just about 10 months ago or so, and now look at the Jimny and look at the whole range of Invicto, etc. in the MPV space, SUV and MPV space. Maruti is seeing users come back to the Nexa showrooms and buy those high value purchases from the Maruti showroom.
Okay.
So I think Maruti likes to take it slow, be a little sure-footed, not venture into something which may or may not take off, and make grand investment plans only when it is very sure about where it wants to go and when it is completely convinced that yes, this is the direction that the market is going to take for the long term, and that is when it goes and makes those announcements and investments. So I think, yeah, to look at it right now, Maruti doesn't have an EV, but Maruti does have a hybrid, and it is perhaps it's going to be opportune 2025 when we'll see the entire e-mobility infrastructure also take off and be available, where owning an EV is not going to be a pain, but is actually going to be easy enough. And that is when Maruti is going to make its entry. That's how I see it.
And being a market leader means you already have some sort of value addition that you can make. You can quickly turn it around, and you already have a captured market that perhaps is going to come back to you.
Absolutely.
For more. Maruti's story, and Maruti's story is also a story of, as our colleague Rakesh Kar often points out, it's a story of India's growth. It's a story of India's future. And R.C. Bhargava also pointing to a very unique perspective there. I think it's important for our viewers to also keep in mind that electric vehicles may not be the only way to move forward, because to have electric vehicles in place, you've got to have charging capacity, you've got to have cells and batteries, and all of that in turn is not sustainable in the long run.
So I believe it will have to be a hybrid, so to speak,
Right.
a hybrid of hybrid vehicles, electric vehicles, hydrogen-driven vehicles. So clean energy, clean fuel is something that we will have to, adopt sooner
Right.
than later. But I think sticking to the auto sector, Amrish, it's also important to look at data that has come in from Mahindra and Mahindra, which again has largely been a diesel based SUV maker, and we've seen again almost a 16% odd rise in sales for the month of August year on year for Mahindra. But the stock this morning trading in the red. What could be the reasons for that?
It's quite difficult to say as to why it's trading the red today, possibly because of the sort of numbers which have come from Maruti. But then, if you're talking of the next year and a half, 2 years, I think M&M should continue doing extremely well, because even in the EV space, they are making their mark. And as far as their new models are concerned, M&M has been getting extremely good sort of response. So I don't see any issue as far as the stock is concerned.